Welcome to another episode of Beyond Sunday, where we keep it real with faith and life, because as you all know, life be lifing. And as we always do, we're here with myself, Julian Luke, and Pastor Thomas. Today we are talking about something that I feel is really, really important that we need to really have a big conversation about. It's church hurt. So we gonna jump right into this. So I have it right here. It says church hurt refers to the emotional, spiritual, and or physical harm caused by experiences within a church context, often stemming from unhealthy leadership practices or the actions of individuals within the church, leading to broken trust and damaged relationships. How do you feel about that particular definition?
I think it's a good definition. I mean, I think it really speaks to probably the bigger, broader source of where church hurt comes from. Poor leadership systems, poor leadership development certainly can lead to church hurt. And so I think that definition, captures that. It also captures kind of at the individual level, how church hurt can happen. I think it's important for us to remember that church hurt can certainly happen, at the individual level, because we're in a place of healing. I mean, the church is not heaven. It's kind of like, it's a hospital, right? It's a place where people come in to heal. So coming in contact with people could produce the opportunity for some hurt.
Okay. So, and we're going to really try to get into as much as we possibly can get in with the time that we have. I've never heard of it. Maybe you have, but from other religions, I don't hear people talking about church hurt. Why do you feel like church hurt is such a big thing within the Christian community? Because I don't hear a lot of church hurt from the Muslim community or so on and so forth.
Well, I mean, I certainly think that in the Christian context, there's a misalignment of expectations. We have the expectation that when we come into a church setting or to a church community, that is a place where, number one, we can be vulnerable, which I think is a realistic expectation. One, that we should be able to be genuinely, authentically ourselves. I think that's a reasonable expectation. But the thing that we have to remember is that we're also in the midst of other flawed people. And anytime we have flawed people together in a community setting, there's going to be the opportunity for some painful situations. I mean, if you look at Paul's letters in the New Testament, like the majority of his letters are addressing messy issues in the church and addressing issues of even church hurt and poor leadership, things like that. So we know that in the New Testament church, it was happening. We shouldn't have the expectation that's not going to happen now, And so I think sometimes it's really because of our expectations.
So, I mean, so you mentioned all these things. So, and I don't know if you know or may know or may not know, are those expectations that the Christian church has there? So you're saying those are not expectations in other religions? And so that's why we don't possibly hear about church hurt in other religions, or you're just saying that because you're, know from a Christian's perspective?
I think I certainly have heard of church hurt in other situations. In particular, Catholicism, I've heard of church hurt in those kinds of situations. I've heard of church hurt in Mormonism. So I don't think any organized religion, whether it has Christ as its focus or not, is exempt from it. I think, again, anytime you get people together and you got a misalignment of expectations, or you've got poor leadership, poor systems, then the opportunity for hurt is going to be there. I think that the Christian church is louder about church hurt.
Okay, so I got a scenario here for you, and the scenario is based on kind of what you said, the expectation of, right? So like, I'm a kid. When I was a kid, and it's actually a scenario, but it's a good example too. When I was a kid, I used to see like these people praying all the time. Like I may see a pastor praying, or my aunt was like super huge in the faith. Like I'm saying, like on knees praying every night, would close her room, had olive oil everywhere. But there was a certain level of like prayer that she would reach, and I would see like growth happening, things happening, God moving. She had a super dope house and 2 and 3 cars and all these things, right? And then I want that experience, but I don't. Now this is the example. I want that experience, but I've never experienced it. And so because of that, because I don't experience prayer the way she experiences it, or because I don't see the gifts happening in the way that I saw them happening with her, then I turn away from the church. So are situations like that a good measure for where church hurt can come from?
I mean, I think, situations like you described really are a challenge to, a biblical world perspective and a challenge to what we understand theologically about the nature and character of God. The way God blesses one person and the way he blesses another can look vastly different, but it doesn't mean that God's not blessing both, giving them what they need, blessing them with whatever he believes is the abundance that's appropriate for them. So I think that's probably more of that scenario. And when I think of church hurt, I think of, situations, here's an example of one that's probably kind of controversial. I grew up in an era in church where if you committed certain types of sins, you were required to come down.
I done been in
the front of the church and apologize to the church.
And we've seen that recently.
And in those scenarios, people oftentimes, in my opinion, ended up more hurt by the church than they did helped, because if we're going to do that, everybody's got to come to the front, right? It can't just be this one person who committed this sin, and this particular sin may be more visible.
Because we all sinners.
Right. We all fall short. And so I saw situations like that create, church hurt, situations of favoritism, creating church hurt where certain families or individuals were favored and, their sins or their actions were either lifted or overlooked. And so poor treatment, when people are most vulnerable or dealing with issues and treating people very poorly, maybe even, accusing them of being deserving, of whatever the consequences or issues that they may be dealing with. And so those are kind of some of the issues that I've seen where those are real painful for people.
So I know we talked last time about people, we were talking about relationships. We were talking about people talking about they were spiritual. So I got a confession to make. So I was like that at one time. Me and the wife were like that at one time. We would tell people that, we're spiritual, but we don't know if the Bible is real. Like, we actually used to say this stuff. But I don't know. I personally, for me, I don't feel like I had a level of church hurt. But do you think that people who move in that direction have some experience of church hurt because of the fact that they feel as though, very similar to what I was saying earlier, their experiences, with God are a little different? So I'll give you an example. Like, I forgot what song I was listening to, but they were like, God spoke to me and he said, and it's like this long paragraph.
Right. And
somebody's like, well, God don't speak to me like that. So why don't I get this experience? Right. So then they become spiritual because they don't have that type of connection. Right. So when people become spiritual, do you think that is a sign of church hurt as well? Or,
I mean, I think potentially it can be, especially if they've distanced themselves from the community of faith. I mean, that could be one reason why, is because something happened in that community of faith that hurt them, and they moved away from kind of the system, if you will, of religion versus the expression of faith. And so they moved away from that. And so that could be a result of that. And I think in our current era, what we see more of is this idea of deconstructing their faith. When people start talking about that, they call themselves ex-Christians.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So they're formerly, evangelical Christians or formerly Christians, and they've moved away from the faith. They're now non-religious, or like you said, they consider themselves spiritual. And for some of those people, when they start deconstructing their faith and you hear their stories, they're telling stories of kind of systems that they were in where there's a lot of hurt, or communities of faith where they were in where there was just a lot of hurt over and over and over again. They were hurt. They saw other people constantly being hurt, and it led them to move away from the community of faith.
Yeah, I mean, when you start going down that rabbit hole of people just being hurt, whether it's in the church or outside of the church, a lot of the people have those questions like somebody passes away or somebody breaks a random arm or they lose their job. The first thing they want to say is, God, why? Mm-hmm. God must not exist. Mm-hmm. And so because of that leads to, what we look at now is, or what I would say is a level of church hurt that makes them leave or move away from the church. So, I mean, you're absolutely right on that. This was one I saw on the Ticker Talker here. So do we tend to put church on a tiered system, and that's why some church hurt exists? So basically you got pastor and then like elder and then mother and then deacon, and then I just came into church, I got saved, so I ain't as strong yet, but I see them, they strong, they good, and when one of them messes up, oh, they not good. So church must not be good. So do you think that a lot of church hurt comes from that tiered system?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely churches can be guilty of creating pedestals for church leaders and others in the church. And the problem with that obviously becomes when those individuals have errors or sin, it's not that their sin is worse. It's just that their crash is louder because they're falling from a higher distance.
Oh, that was deep.
Right. So they're falling from this pedestal that they've been placed on. And so it's really a louder crash because their sin is not any worse than anybody else's in that community of faith, but it's really because they've been elevated. That tiered system obviously can create an opportunity for church hurt because there becomes this expectation, which most likely is unrealistic, that these people are not going to fail, not going to fall. Mm-hmm. They've got it figured out. They've got all of their demons conquered. They got all this stuff handled. But the truth of the matter is that they're just as, susceptible to, falling to the flesh or falling to a temptation as anybody else.
Do you think most churches do a bad job of conveying that message that just because that is the title that they have, that they're on the same playing field as the same guy who just got saved last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think churches don't do a good job of presenting a balanced view of, while this person is called to an office that does have some high standards and requirements, let's not forget that this person is still very much 100% human, and this person still is going to deal with temptation and weakness in the flesh and everything else. So, yeah, we don't present a balanced view. I think it's both. It can be both, that this person is called to a higher standard, based upon what Scripture requires of them, but at the same time, remembering that this person is frail too.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's one of the biggest things that I think that any person struggles with going inside of a church, right? So, I mean, I'm huge confession. Like meeting you, I didn't even ever want to talk to you. I mean, real talk. I didn't want to talk to you because you were the pastor. Like, in the sense that I didn't know how to approach you other than, hey, pastor, how you good today? Like I didn't know how to just have a complete conversation with you because of where you stand within the church. It took me to have multiple conversations and honestly talk to other people around the church to figure out, like, you just a guy, you're a regular guy, but I think that a lot of times we go into these spaces and we have that perception, and even me sitting in some of the positions that I sit in here, I have to realize too that some people may look at me like that. And so I try to even approach my team like, I'm just a regular dude. We chilling, but I think that sometimes that we tend to miss the mark of communicating that information. And so when we get into these spaces, when we get into our churches, I think that we need to, even here on this podcast, right? Like we just need to continue to communicate the information that we people.
Exactly.
And like you always say, and like I say all the time, and I saw it on The Walking Dead, people are people.
People are people.
And you say it all the time. People gonna keep people in. Yep. Yeah. So but I think that we put too much energy and faith in those people to be excellent and above reproach.
Right.
So
to be on all the time. Now I will say, in my own viewpoint, like I am probably harder on pastors and leaders because of the potential harm that we can do, especially when we start talking about our ability to influence people's decisions in their lives and things, how they approach their relationships, how they approach their professions. And that's a huge responsibility, and we should proceed with caution. And it really bothers me when pastors and leaders are careless with that, like careless with that responsibility and that level of influence. And they just, take for granted and do things and say things and act in ways that ultimately end up hurting people. And then we'll turn around and try to take a holy approach to the idea that they somehow know they aren't wrong when they've hurt somebody. And that's one that I can't deal with very well.
Well, I mean, and rightfully so, right? If you're in a leadership position, there is a level of responsibility that you have in that space. I mean, you knew as a human being, just period, walking into that position, that responsibility is there.
Right.
So I don't disagree with you at all in that space. So I think you're right. I think it's a twofold situation. The person stepping in the position needs to understand the position that they hold. And then the person who is watching them step in that position needs to understand that they're still human.
Yes.
So I think it's a twofold thing. So I absolutely agree with that. Some people stated the request of $40,000. Oh, I'm sorry. No, wrong thing. The $40,000 thing.
Okay.
With who was that?
Marvin Sapp.
Yeah. Marvin Sapp. Close the doors. I don't think he said lock. Did you say close or did he say?
He said close the door.
I think he said close. Anyway, but a lot of people have been stating that situation itself was a way for people to get led to church hurt because we have so much of prosperity preaching.
Right.
And prosperity preaching ain't new.
No.
Can prosperity preaching lead to church hurt?
100%.
How so?
Anytime we start focusing on profit over the promises of God, then we definitely are headed down the wrong direction. Because when we start focusing on how are we going to encourage people, manipulate people, push people, prod people into giving a certain amount of money, which is usually focused on some temporary finite thing versus on the larger vision and movement and mission of the church, we're always going to put people in a position where there's church hurt. Especially when we start talking about prosperity gospel, because prosperity gospel is basically saying that God desires for you to be wealthy. And there is a formula of some kind that if you are able to execute this formula, then you will be wealthy or you will prosper. And if you don't prosper, then there's something you're not doing right, because you've got to be able to tap into God in this way. The problem with that thinking is that it woefully misunderstands the nature and character of God, because he is not like that. It treats him like a genie or an ATM machine. And the whole purpose for us in salvation is to be in relationship with God, not to get prosperous or to prosper from him. All of our prosperity naturally comes from our relationship with him. When we have a right relationship with him, we don't become more prosperous than that. Everything else is temporary, right? So when prosperity gospel does what it does, it sets people up for hurt and harm, because when God in their mind doesn't deliver, then they're hurt.
So I saw a pastor that was like, God don't want us to be broke. He don't want us to be broke. Like, I literally saw that. I was watching it one day. You don't believe that?
I believe he said it, but if God doesn't want something, God has all the sovereignty to do something about it.
Fair.
Like,
so do you believe in manifesting?
That we have the ability to manifest stuff?
Yeah.
No, I not in the way we use it. No, not the way I hear it used. Like, if I think on this thing, then I'm going to manifest it, or if I focus on it, I'm going to manifest it into existence. No. So
now there's two things. So you don't believe in it in that way, right? So first of all, what way are you saying that you do believe in it? And then is that a level of that, is that version of manifesting a prosperity gospel as well? And then can that lead to church hurt as well?
No, I when I say it, I think of the word manifestation or manifesting in the sense that when God's will is my will, then it will naturally manifest the things that God desires. So my idea of manifestation is really a complete surrender and yield to the will of God. And by me doing that, then God will manifest things through me as his vessel to accomplish his will and his purpose and bring himself glory. Not me manifesting something I want, which is separate and apart from God's plan, purpose, or will. That's why I see it differently.
So manifesting and vision boards, do you feel like they're the same thing? Like, are they aligned with one another?
I guess I see vision boards a little bit differently.
Okay. All right.
I see vision boards as, okay, this is something that I'm aiming for, planning for, doing, right? Accomplishing. I'm planning to take a trip to Europe, right? So that's on my vision board. I don't see anything wrong with like, this is something I want to do.
Okay.
This is a vision that I have for myself. I think what's different when I hear manifestation, people start talking about, oh, I'm going to manifest that I'm going to make $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. But if that manifestation of the $1 million is on the vision board, then
having a vision to do something and then attempting to manipulate God in order to get it are two different things to me.
Okay.
If I have a vision board and this is something that I envision for myself, that's one thing. To say I'm going to manifest something gives the idea that in a spiritual, divine, supernatural sense, I'm about to create or evoke something to happen that causes that thing to come into existence. That's completely different to me.
All right. Here's another one. Vision board. I pray that the vision board becomes, or I pray that the outcome of the vision board comes to pass.
You're submitting that thing to God and allowing God's will to be done. Different than manifesting. Got you. Okay. The way I usually hear manifesting heard is, no, if I manifest it, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Okay. I got you.
The vision board is like surrendering that thing to God and said, and if God says yes or no, you're willing to accept what God says.
So now, if He says no,
okay,
then you don't get it. Now I'm hurt because God didn't answer my prayer.
Right. God didn't answer my prayer the way I wanted, because no is still an answer. Right. So God didn't answer my prayer the way that I wanted answered. So am I hurt? Possibly. Yeah. I've seen that happen. But the problem is, again, a misunderstanding of the character and nature of God and how God deals with us.
You're very good with words. You're very good. Because see, no is yes. We know no is an answer.
No is
just not the. But you're right, not the answer that we wanted. Okay, got it. All right. So I was seeing someone say something to the degree of, a restaurant. You can go to a restaurant and they give you the wrong order and they do you wrong 3, 4, 5 times. You still go back to that restaurant.
Right.
You go to the church and the church does you wrong one time and you just stop going to all churches.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah. People are done.
Why is that? Why is it that we do that to the church, but we won't do that to our favorite restaurant? Because
our tolerance for mistakes in the church is very low compared to a restaurant. We are willing to give the restaurant more opportunities, but we're not necessarily willing to do that with the church. Because again, we expect people in church to be perfect. When Scripture says we're being perfected, but we're perfect.
That's the thing. If I watch a commercial for a hamburger and that hamburger is stacked right, and I go to that place and that burger be smashed, my expectation was high and you let my expectation come down, I'm still going to go back to that place. It's the same thing.
Right. But you obviously have some expectation that they're going to eventually deliver. They're going to eventually get it right. Like if you go to a restaurant, I don't know if you're going to go to a restaurant and they mess up 5 times, you're going to keep going. Like if you go to a restaurant 5 times, they mess up 1 time, you're probably going back. I don't know if the church gets the same
number of
I don't know if it gets that same opportunity.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I don't disagree with you, but I just find it weird. Like so let's say church A is the thing that did me wrong.
Right.
Then I refuse now to go to church B, C, D, E, and F. Mm-hmm. But if restaurant A did me wrong, all right, I'm just not going to go to restaurant A, but I'm going to go to restaurant A2 that's a little bit further away.
I mean, yeah, like if using your scenario of a hamburger, if somebody messes up my hamburger, I'm not going to stop eating hamburgers. Like it's not like I'm never going to go to a restaurant and not order a hamburger again because restaurant A messed up my hamburger, right? I'm going to go to another restaurant. I'm going to try another restaurant. I'm going to try a different place. I think it's because the wounds oftentimes are so impactful, so painful, and the failures that usually surround either repairing it, reconciling it, just further keep the church hurt in place. People are less like, it's easy for me to just be done with this, or to have so much of a distance that I put between myself and organized religion that I don't subject myself to it. Is it fair?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Is it fair? No, it's not fair. And I think it also I think we have to understand church hurt in different ways, in my opinion. To me, church hurt at the individual level is a little bit different than church hurt from the leadership of a church. And here's the reason why. Because if leadership is doing something, it's not only that one individual most likely that's getting hurt, it's probably
multiple people,
multiple individuals. And however that leadership is leading from the very top, then the potential ways and methods of hurting get pushed all the way throughout the church itself. So now you got the leadership hurting, but you also got lay leaders who may be hurting people in the same ways because the leadership and the systems that are in place allow for that and perpetuate it. So to me, that's a little bit different than the rude person that you meet on a Sunday that maybe hurts you, or the rude person that says something. I think it's a little bit different. I'm not saying it's any less hurt. I'm just saying from a larger impact, when the leadership is failing, because a lot of hurt happening.
Right, because when the leadership is failing, you have multiple hits coming from multiple areas, right? Versus, the one church mother who you looked up to that just said something bad about you and now you upset and So no, I get that. No, I get that wholeheartedly. I don't know. I still don't feel like that's one of the a reason to not seek other churches, right? Like I've always felt like that was always a weird thing to me. Like when you're experiencing church hurt from, let's say, your home church from down home Willacoochee, Georgia or something, and you've been church hurt from there, but now you live in Las Vegas. Well, I ain't going to church, because I remember what happened to me. But that's not the same church. That ain't even the same pastor. They ain't even the same state. So I can't figure out why you transfer those two things.
Well, I think, like in my experience of what I've seen, is that when I've seen church hurt, I mean, deep, wounded, painful church hurt, it usually came from leadership, and it had doctrinal or theological ties to it as well. So it influenced not only that person's experience at that church, but it also influenced their spirituality as an individual. And that hurt was really deep. And that's what I mean by when the leadership fails. Yeah. Like it can wound people for decades. Like,
okay. So how do you, one, recognize church hurt? And then two, how do you solve church hurt?
Well, I think how you recognize church hurt is, first, when we recognize that something has happened or occurred, I think it's first understanding, okay, is this an individual? Is this just with this particular individual? Or is this a larger issue in the church in terms of systems or leadership or whatever? And then, the Bible encourages us, obviously, to be able to go to the individual or to go to that person and attempt to reconcile that issue, and if possible, bring others, who are wise and godly into the conversation if necessary. I think that's harder, quite honestly. If it's a system, I think it's harder. If we're talking about the leadership, I'm not saying it's not possible, but it definitely becomes more challenging to do that. But I think God always wants us to reconcile. Paul's letters often talked about when there were problems in the church, reconciling. Yeah. So the goal is always, how can we repair this and how can we reconcile it? So that's what we would obviously want to do. Some places, systems, leaders, that's not going to be possible. You know, you're going to make that effort and that person is not going to be willing to reconcile. And you may have to make the decision that I can't continue to worship here because my presence here is either distraction or the hurt. I'm just continually hurt over and over again, which I've seen happen, right? I've seen situations where it's been brought to somebody's attention and they continue to reoffend over and over and over again. And there's no opportunity for reconciliation. And so that person has to remove themselves from that particular community. I think removing yourself from the community is the last thing, if possible.
So in removing yourself, and I know you said that's the last thing, but in removing yourself, does that also make room for going to somewhere else? Or do you have to reconcile first before removing yourself, before trying to find another space?
I think you want to try to reconcile yourself. You know, one of the things that came to mind when you were just talking there is that if you're in a healthy church, right? If you're in a healthy church, you're going to know this is a healthy space. This is a situation where this is a misunderstanding. This is a one-off. It's painful, it's hurt, but this is a healthy place, right? They're teaching scripture. I can see people around me. I can see other leaders around me and small group leaders, Bible leaders, other brothers and sisters in Christ who are diligently trying to walk out the faith. In that situation, you should be able to recognize that, okay, this is a situation that maybe I should be able to reconcile with this particular person. If not, if I can't do it on my own, I know there are other people around me that are going to support, hey, the two of you do need to reconcile this. In healthy leadership, if you have all those things, I think that's important. That's why I think it's important to also make sure that you're in a healthy church to begin with. Like when you start talking about things, about joining a church, being a part of a community of faith, making sure that's a healthy community of faith. Because then reconciliation is something that we're open for, and reconciliation is something we're always going to seek. So I think that's a significant thing. If you go into, none of us would go into a hospital that we knew
was terrible,
yeah, and hurt people come in and hurt people come out, right?
Or hurt people come in and don't make it out.
Yeah, like we would not intentionally go into a hospital like that,
right?
But we're going to go into the hospital where people are going and they're getting good treatment, they're getting what they need, and they're coming out better than when they went in. I think we should have that same outlook when it comes to church.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, when I moved here, I didn't have any intention of going to church. I'm gonna be honest. Camille made me come to church. She did. She made me come to church. But the thing about it was, I had never been to a church similar to what we walked into when we were in the other building. Like, it really felt like a community, which made me want to continue to invest into going to church and reading and learning and understanding. Because before then, it was just like, you got to go to church. You gotta, that was the thing. That was what my mama said. It was what my aunt said. That's what I was told I had to do, So I absolutely agree with you. You just got to get into a place to where it's a good church, right, and they really care about you and what you're doing, and actually theologically what they're giving out to the masses. I think that really does matter. So yeah, I don't think you're wrong in that at all. But I think, I don't know, I may have had a little church hurt in me. I don't know, because I don't know where it would have came from. I don't. I have absolutely no idea. I just stopped going. I don't know. I didn't hate the church. I just stopped going. So I don't know. Maybe I need some help. Well, sit down with you for a second and just have some sessions.
It's possible that, maybe not hurt, but there could have been some disconnect and detachment from, the community of faith in terms of just it can be repetitive. Well, I don't want to say become repetitive. I think what we can do sometimes is we can become so entrenched in certain traditions and rituals in the church that it becomes more about that than it does about how do we live this sanctified life? Like, how do we educate, edify people? How do we take the mission of the church beyond the four walls? And so it can become so focused on doing our thing, whatever our thing is, every single week, until that becomes the focus of it all. And you can get a sense of just detachment.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, hey, he's diagnosing me right now. If I had a couch, I'd just lay out on the couch and just. But no, I mean, I think you're right. I think that consistency of the what did you say, what, I can't even think of the word right now.
The ritual?
The ritual. There you go. The consistency of the ritual can become very monotonous.
Yes.
And you start to just get into this, all right, I'm going to church. All right, I'm going to hear a word. All right, I'm going to get up and go. All right.
So much so to the point that if you missed, you didn't really miss.
You didn't miss.
Right?
Yeah.
You would know exactly what went on.
Right. And honestly, if you were in a place where you really were and truly invested and they were truly feeding you, missing would be a major thing.
Right.
Like, dang, I missed church. Mm-hmm. And I think also, now that I'm thinking about it, is one of the good reasons of why you get active in a lot of things within church. And I think that's probably one of the things that I was missing as a youngster too, is I did the choir, and then, I started in my old church, the last church I remember I used to record the sermons back when we still had tape decks and reel to reel. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, but outside of that, like, it was the same routine. And so you may be right. I may have been suffering from disconnect. I
mean, I believe that being a part of a church should inspire wonder and awe, about who God is, about the way we're all connected, as in a body of believers, how we're connected to each other, how we relate to each other. And I think it should inspire some wonder and awe. Like, it should inspire a certain level of excitement.
Yeah.
And joy, and encouragement, and feeling of each other just when we're in the presence of each other, right? Because the world drains so much from us. And so being able to be in that community, whether it be corporate worship, a small group, or whether we're just hanging out with a fellowship, like, it ought to be something that's renewing, refreshing, and restorative for us. And it should inspire greater awe and wonder about who God is, and to be like, this is my family, and these are the people I'm going to spend eternity with, and we're going to all spend eternity with our God. And it should inspire some wonder and awe rather than disconnect or discontentment or hurt or whatever.
Yeah. There you have it. You've diagnosed me today and also solved my issue. So I think I owe you a bill. But any other thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I think this has been certainly a great discussion. You started off talking, at one point you were asking me about Marvin Sapp and the $40,000.
I was. And I mean, I got into that and we went into prosperity preaching,
but think about this for a second. Some people were not offended by what he did. And they said that was just the way church is, right? Churches that they grew up in. And to me, that sends off red flags. Not necessarily, I'm not saying that about the churches they grew up in, but more so about the idea that a particular ritual or act that we do in church, that when you pull it out on its own and you look at it, that we can't go, oh, that's a bad idea. Like, that's just not a good idea to the person who may walk in off the street or who shows up. This idea that you're closing a door and then telling them, hey, I need X amount of dollars mm-hmm. from you, assuming that everybody watching and present and in person is operating from the same place of understanding that this is quote unquote normal.
My dad left the church like that.
Yeah. So I think it definitely, when you pull it out on its own and you look at it, you go, yeah, I don't think this is communicating what the church should be trying to communicate to the rest of the world.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, I thought it was crazy. I mean, I know there's been a level of justifications and all that kind of stuff that, he's gone on and I guess gone on a justification tour of it. But I mean, from the outside looking in, here we go. If I was just a guy who was like, I want to get back into church, mm-hmm. I'd be like, yeah, no, that's watching that is, yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. But also, we also have to start to ask ourselves a question about, theologically, is this okay? Like, biblically, mm-hmm. like what we're doing, is this okay? And it does strike at the heart of the idea of being a cheerful giver. Like, when God moves, to me, if $40,000 was needed, I don't have to poke, prod, beg, do any of that.
Right.
That because we're supposed to be cheerful givers and we're supposed to have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, God can move on the body in such a way that whatever's required, needed, if he wants to pull the resources from there, then he can do that. Like, I don't have to, I shouldn't.
But see, here's the thing.
Have to twist people's arms to do that.
True. But here's a question. God don't, I don't know if it's a question or not, a statement. God don't need your tithe though.
God is not in need of our money.
Right. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
God is not in need of our money. However, we are called to give cheerfully, and we are called to give often, right? To the mission of the church. Because
and that could be anything. It doesn't have to be financial. It could be your talents. It could be your time. It could be anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, we should give of ourselves, right? Completely. That time, talent, resources, treasures, all those things. Like we should bring those things to the advancement of God's kingdom on the earth. We shouldn't restrict or withhold those things, and we should be willing to share those things. But we should do it cheerfully.
Correct.
The Bible says not begrudgingly.
Right. And you ask, if I'm sitting in the room, close the door. Give me $20. Hey, we got 1,000 people in here. If everybody give $20, well, what if I only got 5?
It don't matter whether I got
5 or 100. Right. If I don't want to give it, I don't. Yeah, no, I get you.
You got to come back and ask me.
Yeah,
I wasn't gonna give it to you the first time.
Right.
So
I had no intention because now, I had no intention. Now you forcing me to do it.
And closing the doors is the insinuation that I cannot leave until you get your money.
But he just said close the door. He said you're free to leave. I just said close the doors. I don't know. That was his explanation. That was his explanation. I'm just saying. He said but he did admit that it did come off a little wrong if he said close the doors, but. The truth of the matter is his follow-up was, I just said close the doors. I didn't say lock the doors. You're still free to leave. That was kind of his explanation.
Well, if I was free to leave, you didn't need to say close the doors.
Again.
He said it multiple times. So he wanted the doors closed as a barrier or obstruction from leaving the facility.
That's true. And again, like I said before, my dad left a church like that. My dad told me straight up, it was a church that he had been going to. Matter of fact, when I was a young lad, we were going to that church when it was first being built, and he had stayed in that church, and it had gotten big, and it had multiple campuses and so on and so forth. And he said one day he was sitting inside of the sanctuary, and he was like, the pastor was like, I still feel like we got about $500 that we can give. Somebody need to give. And he was like, that day I got up and walked out.
Yeah.
So. I mean, he goes to church now, though.
If I would have been there with Marvin Sapp that day,
yeah,
got up and walked out.
Now, do you connect the person with the music? I'm just asking because Marvin Sapp got some good music, though.
He's got some what?
Good music.
Do I connect the person?
Like, are you just like not going to listen to Marvin Sapp anymore?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right.
That I would do because
so I'll make sure
any artist pretty much you would probably stop listening to. Because most of them got something going on.
Well, true.
We all have a struggle of some kind.
So we still good with William McDowell too, right? Because he got some hits. I'm just asking.
I'm not a big William McDowell fan, but okay.
Oh my gosh, you are not a William McDowell fan?
I mean, a few things I guess are okay.
Okay, all right. Well, I know what not to play on the playlist now.
I'll play it.
Okay, all right. Hey, you gave me the clearance. It's live now. You gave me the clearance. All right. If you hear William McDowell, we good. All right. But no, I absolutely agree. From an outward perspective, that definitely does not give like I need to be at church or that church.
Yeah, no, I think it sends the wrong message.
Absolutely. All right, now you got any other thoughts?
Nope.
Okay, good. All right. Well, hey, this has been another episode of Beyond Sunday. Look, this has been a super great episode. Hey, matter of fact, I don't usually say this, but hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications as well, because whenever we have something popping up right here at the RFBC channel, you will be notified. Other than that, man, we appreciate you guys. Remember, this is not just Sunday talk. This is an everyday walk. We appreciate you guys. We'll see y'all next time.